All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at pheochromocytoma.
Pheochromocytoma.
It's a mouthful, I know.
It is.
But, you sent in some pieces from that up-to-date article,
Right.
Pheochromocytoma and Genetic Disorders, and you want to really, get a grasp on this condition.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare,
Hmm.
especially the genetic side of it. So that's what we're going to do today.
I think it's a great topic to really dig into. I mean, understanding the genetics can be so important
Yeah.
for early diagnosis and treatment. So,
Absolutely. So, okay, let's start with the basics. What exactly is pheochromocytoma? I was actually surprised to read it's not super common.
yeah, it's definitely not something you hear about every day.
Right.
Pheochromocytoma affects less than 0.2% of people with hypertension. So it's a tumor that forms in the adrenal glands.
Okay.
Those are those small glands that sit right on top of your kidneys.
Oh, okay.
And these tumors, they can release a bunch of one called catecholamines.
Catecholamines. Oh, yeah, I remember those from, biology class. Is that like adrenaline?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like your body's stress response system suddenly getting stuck on overdrive.
Oh, wow.
Some common symptoms are things like high blood pressure, sweating, a really fast heartbeat,
Okay.
and even anxiety.
Huh. So it could feel like a panic attack almost.
It can, very much so.
Wow, that's intense. And the article mentioned a good number of these cases are familial. What does that mean exactly?
So familial means there's a genetic link,
Yeah.
a mutation that's passed down through families.
Gotcha.
And we see this in about 15–20% of pheochromocytoma cases.
Okay.
But the good news is, with a family history, people are often diagnosed earlier, sometimes even before symptoms even start, thanks to genetic testing.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. That's
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So are there specific genetic syndromes that are linked to pheochromocytoma?
There are a few key ones to keep in mind.
Okay.
One is VHL syndrome.
Okay.
This syndrome is known for causing a bunch of different types of tumors,
Right.
with pheochromocytomas often affecting both adrenal glands,
Oh, wow.
being a really prominent feature.
Okay.
But it doesn't stop there. VHL can also lead to tumors in the brain and spinal cord, as well as the eyes.
Oh, wow.
And there's even an increased risk of certain cancers, like kidney cancer.
So it's not just the adrenal glands then.
Uh.
It can impact a lot of different systems in the body.
Absolutely.
What about some of the other syndromes mentioned in the article?
Another big one is MEN2,
Okay.
which actually comes in two subtypes,
Okay.
MEN2A and MEN2B.
Gotcha.
Both are very strongly associated with medullary thyroid cancer.
Right.
And you guessed it, pheochromocytomas.
Of course.
But here's an interesting twist. The type of tumor can actually influence which specific catecholamine is produced,
Really?
leading to different symptoms.
So wait, depending on the specific tumor type, someone with MEN2 could have different symptoms.
Exactly.
Wow.
For example, some MEN2 tumors can lead to persistent diarrhea because they produce way too much of certain hormones.
Oh, wow.
It's like one of those little clues that can point towards a diagnosis.
Yeah. It's crazy how important it is to really understand the specific genetic side of it. It's not just like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's very individualized.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
What about that last one, neurofibromatosis type 1?
Right. So that's often shortened to NF1.
Okay.
This one's most recognizable for causing neurofibromas.
Okay.
Those are those soft, benign tumors that grow on nerves.
Right.
It can also cause those cafe au lait spots on the skin,
Mm-hmm.
Lish nodules in the eyes,
Mhm.
and, yes, pheochromocytomas.
Okay, so NF1 has a lot of potential symptoms. Is the chance of developing a pheochromocytoma with this syndrome high?
It's lower compared to the other syndromes we've talked about,
Okay.
somewhere between 0.1 and 5.7%.
Okay, so still something to be aware of, though, especially if someone's already dealing with other complications from NF1.
Exactly.
Now, the article also brought up familial paraganglioma. What's the connection there?
So it's definitely related. Think of your body's communication system as this complex network of pathways.
Oh.
Paragangliomas are like disruptions at different points in that network.
Okay.
And with familial paraganglioma, there's a 50% chance of passing on the mutated gene to each child.
Wow, okay.
It's what we call an autosomal dominant inheritance pattern.
So if one parent has the mutated gene, each of their children has a flip of the coin chance of inheriting it?
Exactly.
That's pretty significant.
It is.
Wow. And most cases of familial paraganglioma, are they caused by mutations in specific genes?
Yes, most cases are caused by mutations in genes that are responsible for energy production in our cells,
Oh, okay.
specifically the succinate dehydrogenase genes.
Gotcha. It's interesting how where these paragangliomas show up can make a big difference in the symptoms, right?
You're right, it can.
Like the article talked about how head and neck paragangliomas are less likely to cause noticeable symptoms compared to the ones in the abdomen. Why is that?
Good question. That really comes down to whether or not the tumor is actually producing hormones.
Oh, okay.
The ones in the abdomen are much more often hormone active, which leads to those catecholamine surges we were talking about earlier.
Right.
But there's a really interesting thing with certain mutations,
Okay.
like SDHD and SDHAF2, which are commonly associated with head and neck paragangliomas. It's called maternal imprinting.
Maternal imprinting, what is that?
It means that if you inherit the mutated gene from your mother,
Okay.
you won't develop the disease.
Oh, wow.
But if you inherit it from your father,
Okay.
you are very likely to develop the condition.
So even within the same family, you could have completely different outcomes depending on which parent you got the gene from.
It's pretty wild, right?
That's crazy.
It just goes to show how complex and fascinating genetics can be.
Yeah.
And it really emphasizes the need for personalized medicine, where we consider not just the disease itself, but also a person's unique genetic makeup.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it really makes you think about how family history is so important. You know, it's not just some abstract thing. It's really a powerful tool for understanding your own health risks.
Absolutely. Knowing your family's medical background can help you make much more informed decisions about your health.
Yeah.
Whether it's through lifestyle changes, regular screenings,
Right.
or even genetic testing.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of genetic testing, the up-to-date article mentioned it can be, kind of a complex process.
Yeah.
Especially with something like pheochromocytoma, where there are several genes that could be involved.
Yeah, it can get pretty complicated.
Yeah.
That's why the article recommends like a stepwise approach
Okay.
to genetic testing for pheochromocytoma.
A stepwise approach. What does that mean?
It means that instead of testing for every single gene all at once,
All right.
doctors kind of use a strategic approach
Okay.
based on each person's specific situation.
I see.
They consider things like the person's age, their symptoms, family history, and even the specific characteristics of the tumor.
So it's like a process of elimination almost.
Exactly.
Narrowing down the possibilities based on what's most likely.
Yes, precisely. For instance, if someone has a pheochromocytoma that's affecting both adrenal glands,
Okay.
but they don't have a history of medullary thyroid cancer or a goiter,
Right.
the first step might be to test for mutations in that VHL gene.
Gotcha.
It's all about choosing the most relevant tests based on the individual's presentation.
So it's not one size fits all. It's really tailoring the testing to that specific person.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And the article, it goes on to provide some specific recommendations for different scenarios, right?
It does.
Like what to test for first if someone is diagnosed at a younger age,
Right.
or if they have an abdominal paraganglioma versus one in the head or neck.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool how they've really developed this systematic approach.
It is.
It's like a detective story using all the clues to try to find the genetic cause.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights the importance of having those open and honest conversations with your doctor.
Right.
They can really help you understand, all the intricacies of genetic testing and guide you toward the best path for you.
It's all about working together as a team, like you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm curious, what about people who develop pheochromocytoma seemingly out of nowhere,
Right.
with no family history? Does genetic testing still have a role for them?
That's a really good question, and it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
There is some debate about it.
Okay.
These are often called sporadic cases.
Sporadic, because it seems like it just happened randomly.
Yeah, exactly.
But there could still be like an underlying genetic mutation.
Precisely. Some studies have shown that up to 24% of people with seemingly sporadic pheochromocytoma
Okay.
actually do have detectable genetic mutations.
Wow.
But other studies have found much lower rates.
Interesting. So if you were diagnosed with pheochromocytoma and had no family history,
Mm-hmm.
would you opt for genetic testing? Sounds like a really tough decision.
It is. It's a very personal decision.
Right.
And it should definitely be made in consultation with your doctor.
Yeah.
They can help you weigh the potential benefits and risks, taking into account things like the cost of the testing,
Yeah.
what the results might mean for you and your family.
Right, because even if you don't have kids yet, knowing that you carry a certain gene could impact future family planning decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a lot to consider. It's different for every person.
For sure. But going back to the original question about whether genetic testing is worthwhile in sporadic cases,
Right.
the up-to-date article seems to lean toward recommending it,
It does.
especially for younger people diagnosed with pheochromocytoma.
Mm.
Is that because the chances of finding a genetic link are higher?
That's the thinking.
Okay.
And even if they don't find a specific mutation,
Right.
the testing can still provide useful information to help guide treatment and management.
So knowledge is power, even when we're talking about something as complicated as genetics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes that knowledge can really be life-changing.
Yeah.
Early detection and intervention can make a huge difference
Right.
in the outcome of these conditions like pheochromocytoma.
I'm really starting to see why you're so passionate about this topic.
Oh, yeah.
It really shows how important it is to understand our genes and how they can influence our health.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is. It's amazing to think that we can look at our DNA and get all this information about our health. It's like having this roadmap, but we're still kind of figuring out how to read it.
That's a great way to put it. It's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
And like any tool, it's most effective when we understand how to use it properly.
Right.
And that's where ongoing research and open communication with doctors is so important.
Absolutely. So it feels like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From understanding what pheochromocytoma even is to exploring all the genetic links and how complicated genetic testing can be. It's been a really interesting journey.
It has. And I think the biggest takeaway for you is that knowledge really does give you the power to take control of your health.
Yeah.
So if you're at all concerned about your own risk for pheochromocytoma, especially if you have a family history of high blood pressure or any of the syndromes we talked about, don't hesitate to talk to your doctor.
Absolutely. They can help you figure out your individual risk factors.
Exactly.
And guide you toward the best steps to take. Maybe this deep dive has even sparked a new interest in learning more about your family's medical history.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And, as you delve into your family history, you might even start to wonder,
Yeah.
could there be other genetic connections to pheochromocytoma that haven't been discovered yet?
Right.
It's a fascinating field.
Yeah.
Genetics is constantly evolving, so what we know today might just be scratching the surface.
That's a really good point. It makes me think about how even with all the progress in science and medicine, there's still so much more to learn and discover.
Absolutely.
It really speaks to the power of curiosity and staying informed.
Well said. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of pheochromocytoma.
Of course.
Remember, knowledge is power.
Yes.
And understanding your health is one of the most empowering things you can do.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for being our guide on this journey. It's been really insightful.
It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening out there, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep those minds engaged.